call, please.
Peggy Bossy,
Here.
Paul Godwin, Chris Huster, Karen Kellums, Dan Downey.
Here.
This meeting is a meeting of the Deer Park Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. Due to the COVID-19 national pandemic, community input is being suspended for this meeting. However, public comments will be accepted via this link.
Thank you. And I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So move.
All those in favor of approving this afternoon's meeting agenda, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, at this time we are on to agenda item number 6, which is a Board of Education recommendation. So I would like to recommend to approve employment of Jeff Lewis as treasurer of the Deer Park Community City Schools effective October 12th, 2020, per the treasurer contract as presented.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving employment of Jeff Lewis as treasurer of the Deer Park Community City Schools effective October 12th, 2020, per the treasurer contract presented, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Jeff.
Say anything?
I would just like to say thank you to the board for giving me this opportunity, and also a big thank you to Melissa Harner. It's been a pleasure working with you for the past almost 3 years now.
On to agenda item number 7, which is board discussion, reopening of the schools.
Thank you, and it actually should say returning to schools update, but it falls in line with the reopening of schools. And you know, we talked last board meeting, we started having the discussion a little bit of the returning to full-time, in-person, face-to-face instruction for kids. And so I wanted to have a conversation tonight with all of you just about kind of what I'm thinking, what our leadership team has been thinking. I talked to many teachers yesterday as well. So I'm going to give you some of the information. I'm also going to give you a little bit of empirical data that I've collected over the last couple of weeks, just that really, I think, supports our return to school. And I'm going to turn it over to all of you to talk about it, to ask me any questions you might have, just to discuss when this should happen. So first of all, just to give a little background, and I mentioned this at our last board meeting, but I meet multiple times a week. I have conversations with Hamilton County Public Health, also other superintendents around the area. We discuss what's happening in the school districts regarding COVID-19, what the data looks like. I handed to you a report that it's called the Health Collaborative Situational Dashboard that on Monday mornings Hamilton County Public Health will send to me. And there's a few data points in here that they really look at to help them determine how things are going. And I think I'll start with this. You guys have heard it, I'm sure, in the media and on the news, that a lot of things they look at are hospital admissions, ICU admissions. They talk about the R data, the R factor. I'm going to go through just a little bit of that as quickly as possible. I'm going to not try to get all the way in the weeds, but I just want you to see and understand what I'm looking at as well. So if you turn to page 4, really, of your packet, that is after hospital demand, that's one of the pieces they look at. In this first chart that I'm looking at here, ICU admission, you can see when you hear me say that data is trending downward, that's one of the pieces I've looked at. The next page, on page 5, is hospital admissions, okay? COVID-19 patient hospital admissions. Again, you can see very clearly data's been trending downward, okay? Go to the next page, they always talk about the percentage of beds that are used in the hospital. You can see again, it's as low as it's been ever at this point, really since the beginning of this pandemic. Go to the next page, the next 2 pages after forecast demand. The estimated R, just as another explanation, that's a reproduction number. And really, the best way to describe that is for every 1 person infected. So if the R factor is 2, That means for every one person infected, they infect 2 more. Okay? And what they tell you is that anything above 1, the virus is actively spreading. Anything below 1, they relatively have it contained. I would say over the past 6 to 8 weeks, it's fluctuated. It's gone above 1, below 1, back above, back below. Right now, we're below. As of Monday, Hamilton County, we're at 0.96. I heard on the radio yesterday morning on my way into work, I think it was down to 0.94 or 0.92, so it was headed in the right direction as well. Again, it jumps around a little bit, but we've been more consistently below 1 than we've been above it. If you flip a couple more pages, the next 2 or 3 pages are really about that R data, and they talk about Kentucky and Indiana. Keep going. I would say the next page that I'd really want you to look at, and I'll show you in just a second. Okay, it's this page here. At the top, it says percentage of test results returned positive in 14 county region. So take a look at that if you would. Okay, right now, in this 14 county region, where the baseline, if you look at the baseline over the last, I would say since beginning of August, 4.4%, you can see the dots as of late are all below the baseline, okay, as far as positivity rates go. I want to scroll back a couple other pages, because another piece that I like to look at that I want to show you is the percentage of test results returned positive by age for the 14 county area. And so there's a chart you'll see, looks like this. It's titled at the top, percentage of test results returned positive by age of patient for 14 county area. And you'll see the demographic, our kid demographic, 5 to 17, tends to be, other than the college demographic, tends to be the higher one, but it's still below the average. It's at 4%. Okay, remember average is 4.4, it's at 4%. The next important thing to look at is our teacher age demographic. You know, we care about our kids, we want to make sure they're safe, but we also care and want to make sure our teachers are safe as well. And you look at that 25 to 29, which we have some teachers that fall there, they're at 2.6% positivity rate. 30 to 39 is 2.3% positivity rate. 40 to 49 is 3.2. 50 to 59 is 2.6. And I would say that covers 98% of our teaching staff, okay? And then the very last chart that they show you is mobility. So if you go to the last graph, it looks like this for mobility. Basically what they tell you is when the residential mobility is higher, meaning people are staying at their residence, at their homes, the positivity rates go down. I mean, that's common sense. And you can also see, though, that the mobility rate of traveling to the grocery and pharmacy has been lower than average, retail recreation has been below average, and the workplaces continue to be well below average. A lot of businesses are still working from home, and that's helping with the positivity rate, okay? But you also notice everything I've talked about, since schools have returned to full-time in session, data trends are still going down, okay? Has not had a big effect. And so some of that empirical data that I talked about, I mentioned that I talked to a lot of superintendents almost daily. I talked to multiple superintendents. And one of the pieces that I wanted to talk to you about is just looking first locally, the CHL. Okay, really, you know, we know that there have been a lot of kids quarantined. Not a lot of kids positive. There's been a lot of kids quarantined. Last Thursday, I was talking to Jonathan Cooper, at superintendent of Mason. Myself, Jonathan, and a couple other superintendents had a lunch meeting with High Ames. And Jonathan, you know, Mason's a huge school district. I think 12,000 kids or something like that, and I know 20% or so are doing virtual. But you're still left with 10,000 kids. And I said, Jonathan, what is your biggest concern or biggest challenge, being that you guys have been back full-time since the beginning? What's your biggest challenge? And he said student quarantines. And out of last week, as of last Thursday, I think he had 140 or 160 thereabout. I can't remember what exact number he said. It was either 140 or 160 student quarantines at the time. And out of all of those, he had 0 positive students, okay, at that time. I don't know, it may have changed a week later. This was a week ago today that I had that conversation, so it may have changed. However, his biggest concern is that these students are close contacts with other family members that may have been identified as positive, and these kids were they were out of school for 2 weeks. So they're missing 2 weeks of instruction. You know, they're not on remote learning. They're in school face to face, and with all the other teachers teaching, they're having to send home work, kids are doing work on their own, and so just like kids here in a hybrid model when they're not in school, it's really hard for them to stay caught up. They do their best. I know a lot of our kids have support from family, a lot don't. And so when they don't, they can fall behind very quickly. And even those that do have the support of family, they could still fall behind very quickly because parents are working full-time jobs. Just trying to keep that consistent support is very difficult. So I asked the CHL schools. I had a conversation with the superintendents here in CHL. Dr. Warsa reached out to a few of her contacts. And right now, I really just focused on staff members because I think one of our other large concerns, you know, from a staff perspective, we have staff that are in high risk, staff that, for whatever reason, whether it's age or underlying health conditions, they seem, the older you are, the more you seem to be impacted, okay? There hasn't been this huge surge amongst students, and we know that. But I want to know about staff. At Reading, they're half days right now. They have an AM and PM model. It's a hybrid model, a little different than ours. They're every day, but half the kids come in the morning, half the kids come in the afternoon. They haven't had any positive staff cases. At Three Rivers, they did have one instructional aide test positive. I didn't get clarification on whether that was due to school or not, or if it was something. For the most part, the superintendents that I spoke with, they said their staff members or students, they pretty much know exactly where they got it when they get it. Very few times do they not know. Madeira, they had one case, one staff positive. It happened on the second day of school, and they're saying, can't really link that. It was the second day of school, so they're not linking that to anything that happened at school. Marymount, they've had 0. Now they've only been in person since they were hybrid like us, and they've been in person face-to-face since last Monday. Finneytown is remote. Even though they're remote, they've had one positive staff case, but they've been remote the whole time, so that can't be linked to school either. Wyoming, they've had one teacher, which was during PD, Professional Development Week. Once again, you can't link that to school. That's at the very beginning of the school year. In Indian Hill, they've had 0. And again, they've only been in person. They started out hybrid. They've been in person since last Monday. But then I told you I talked to Jonathan Cooper. Currently, they have one positive staff case. Don't know if that was linked to school or not. I don't think it was. Lakota, right now they have 0, currently have 0 positive staff cases. And Lebanon, they've been in person the whole time. They currently have 0 positive staff cases. I had a meeting today, this afternoon as well, and several of these superintendents were actually on the meeting. And we were just talking, COVID is obviously a big topic of conversation all the time. And what really we have found is what the data is showing, that the masks seem to work. Some of the conversation that I had with staff yesterday, you know, number one, their biggest concern is social distancing, the inability to social distance. And along with that is locker transitions. And, you know, how do we go to lockers? And are kids going to be next to each other in the locker, you know, going to their lockers in the hallways? And the empirical data shows we have about 6 weeks of data since schools have started and have been in person. There has been zero spread amongst the local school districts in lockers, in classrooms. Most all the cases of the very few that have happened, they can link, they know exactly where it happened. Mom and dad must have got it because they got it at work. They might be in the healthcare industry. Or the teachers that have come down with it, they were at family functions. That's happened quite a few times where there are family functions and 10 of the 20 family members there all got it. They know where they're getting it. I think because we are so prudent about wearing masks, one of the biggest fears of all of our teachers, I think, coming into August and thinking that we were coming back on a 2-week hybrid model and then coming back full time, was the fear that our kids weren't going to wear their masks. Okay, that came up a lot, and it was going to be a discipline issue, that kids couldn't do it, they wouldn't do it. Well, we have 6 weeks of our own empirical data to tell you they do. We've had very few cases of kids not wearing masks. If you drive by Amity Elementary during recess, you'll see kids playing football, running around on they wear their masks. They wear them all the time. They wear them in their cars home. They wear them when they get home. Parents have to tell them, take your masks off. They just don't know any different, so it's not that big of a deal. It's a bigger deal to us as adults. It's harder for us to keep them on. So again, empirically, the empirical data will show it's only 6 weeks. I know that. But early results are we are not seeing these mass spreads in any of these schools, any of the local school districts of COVID-19. As I look at my notes from yesterday, I mentioned I talked to a lot of staff members. My intent yesterday was to spend the morning in the junior senior high school and engage every junior senior high school teacher, and then go over to Amity in the afternoon and try to engage every Amity teacher in conversation just about their thoughts, their feelings, their concerns. Well, I was at the high school from about 7:45 till 3 o'clock in the afternoon and still didn't get to every one of them. Okay, so the conversations were good conversations, but my point is I didn't get to Amity. I have talked individually with a couple Amity teachers. But the big concerns from those that I pretty much talked to probably 85% of the staff at the junior senior high yesterday. Social distancing. How are we going to social distance? Well, we talked about this at the beginning. The guidance from Ohio Department of Health asked school districts to distance as much as you can possible. Okay? The webinar that I sent all of you back in August from Children's Hospital, maintain 3 feet. Okay? That's good. 4 feet was better, 5 feet was better, 6 feet was ideal, was best. These schools, Lakotas, the Masons, all these schools and these are monster school districts, 2 of the biggest school districts in the state. You can't social distance when you come back full time, when you commit to doing that. But the number one, and I'll repeat, the number one preventative measure are your masks. Okay, distancing is 2. They're not seeing a massive spread. They're just not. Now, it begs the question, well, Jay, we're headed into cold and flu season. And when I talked to teachers yesterday, that was one of the topics that came up quite a bit. Are you concerned that you're headed back to school, that we're going to do this right at the beginning of cold and flu season? And my question back to them was, well, how long does cold and flu season last? It lasts till March or April. And so if you're going to wait for cold and flu season to be over, you're never coming back face to face. You might as well cash it in for the year and say you're going to do hybrid the entire year. Okay. Another concern was, okay, well, if we come back face to face and cold and flu season hits and we're here 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden we have to pivot and go remote, we don't want to have to go remote. And that was something we talked about early on. We wanted kids here as long as possible. And you know, and I told several of the groups yesterday, I said, well, let's think about it. Do the math. Okay, let's say we're in school a month right now. In a month, let's just say a month is 4 weeks. I know sometimes it's 5 weeks. Let's say it's 4 weeks. Okay, simple math. That's 20 school days. Right now, kids are in school 8 of those 20 days. They are home 12 of those 20 days. Okay, essentially we're home for over 2 weeks doing remote as it is right now in our model. But the difference is if we come back to school for 2 weeks, teachers are with kids every day for 2 straight weeks. If something would happen and we'd have a teacher or 2 get sick, or 40 or 50 kids get sick, and we said, you know, earlier in the year, Madeira had to quarantine their whole 8th grade. And if we had to do that, okay, well, now you quarantine the whole 8th grade, at least every single day our teachers are going to be teaching their bells online, and our kids are going to be connecting with their teachers every single day. Right now, when we're going remote, kids aren't connecting with teachers except on Wednesdays, and even then it's just for a little bit of time at best. So to me, and what I talked to the staff that I met with yesterday, we're still in a better place even if we're only here 2 weeks, and then something would happen. Again, empirically, the empirical data will show you it's not going to happen. It hasn't. Now, that's not taking into consideration that we are entering cold and flu season, and we also know that many symptoms of cold and flu are the same symptoms of COVID. It could happen. Okay, but to me, we're in a better spot if we're going remote, if everybody's remote, and then our teachers are online teaching their classes at the same time they would teach those classes every day. They could still report to work and still teach out of their classrooms. So, biggest fear was concern of social distancing. The other fear was, you know, the transition. Speaking of transitions, the question came up to me a lot. Not a question, but more of a statement. Well, how much lead time are you going to give us? You know, what we don't want is on a Friday to get an email and say, we're coming back full time on a Monday. And I told them that wasn't my intent. I said I wouldn't do that to you guys. But I was very honest with them. I told them my own personal opinions. I told them that the board has yet to talk about this as a board and that we were doing that today at 4 o'clock. But I said in my own personal opinion, initially, when I first started chewing on this coming back to school and looking at what would be best, I thought, well, second quarter seems like a natural time to come back. And I thought at first that was my first thought. And then I thought, well, why wait? Why wait? What if we could come back with 2 weeks left in the first quarter, and kids that were floundering, many kids that are floundering right now. I've heard from many parents, so I know that it's a struggle. But if we bring them back with 2 weeks till the end of the quarter, now they have a chance to rectify their grade. They have a chance to get back on track, hopefully salvage some of those grades going into the end of the first quarter. Teachers are spending 10 straight days with the kids. Kids are there for 10 straight days. Then we hit the second quarter, we hit the ground running. So what I told the staff yesterday, again, I made clear that this was my own personal opinion, that this was not me speaking for the board, that the board had to discuss this. But I said, best case scenario, we would come back a week from next Monday, which is, I think, October, let me look at my calendar, I think it's October 5th or 6th. 5th, thank you, Paul. October 5th, best case scenario. I said, worst case scenario for me personally, we would come back to start the second quarter, which would be October 19th. So I said, somewhere in between there. And I told them, I said, if I can give you a week's notice, how does that sound to you? And the groups I talked with, they said, if we had a minimum week's notice, we can do that. They felt comfortable with that. So I'm telling you these things just to give you some reference, some understanding of the conversations that I've had with teachers, with superintendents, with Hamilton County Public Health. I'm hoping that the data that I've shared with you and the stories that I've shared with you will help you guys come to a appropriate decision for our kids. But I can just tell you, remote learning is hard. Hybrid learning is hard. Several of you have grandkids and kids that are currently in school, and you guys know how hard it is. Some of our kids are successful with it. I would say more are unsuccessful with it. But our kids need to be in school. And so I'm going to turn it over to you to ask questions, share your thoughts, ideas, concerns. I think for the most part, not for the most part, I know all of our staff, while they all have concerns about safety, about kids' safety, about their own personal safety, all of them to a T said, I know kids need to be back in the building. They know that. But they don't want to do it at the sake of their health. But I also think that we have enough data and enough districts are kind of taking the leap before us to show us that it can happen and we can do this. Questions?
Jay, I would just say, safety is our number one concern. I think we have made that a priority since we've gone down this road with COVID. And I think that with the numbers where they are, I support the thought process of returning to school. I know that parents are certainly on board with that. Good to know that the teachers also support that decision. And,
now, Dan, sorry to interrupt. Teachers know that kids need to be back. I don't know if they necessarily all support it from a health standpoint. They're concerned.
Right. We're all concerned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's the right direction to go. I agree with the thought of the 1 or 2 week before the end of the semester to maybe give some kids an opportunity to get up to speed, if you will, on some things they've missed already in the first semester, and then hit the ground running, start a second semester.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say that I think that kids come 2 days a week and they are there 100% of those 2 days a week, but 3 days a week they're not. And I think it is a struggle. And as you were talking about grades, I guess I'd like you to kind of send this out to the community about what you talked about grades today, about, it's very difficult for teachers. When kids are in school, teachers are teaching them, okay? Because that's that face-to-face content to be able to teach them what's going on. So then do you give them the test at home, or do you take the time to give the test at school? I think we've got kind of a mixed blend there. I don't know how you feel about grades. Can you address that?
Well, I'd like to add to that comment. You talked about testing, and you said that, and I had at least one, maybe two conversations at the high school yesterday where they talked about, so far, kids have been in school 10 days. At the time, it was 8 days for B-Day kids, 10 days for A-Day kids. But of those 10 days, I think they had tested 4 of those days because teachers want to give their assessments when kids are here in person. They're not sending their assessments home. And they said, well, you know, and combine that with map tests, you know, which took another day away, for some teachers, not all. But they've spent a lot of time just giving assessments on content that they've been sending home for kids to learn really on their own with their parents. So that was also a concern. From a grading perspective, Mrs. Huster, obviously as a district, you know, I have not had those conversations with our teachers and our building leadership team. When I say building leadership, our principal and assistant principals to meet with the teachers. But one of the things we talked about today, I know there's some concerns at the elementary level about what grades and what are their grades going to represent and what are their grades going to look like. And look, we know first quarter, it's been very difficult. Our intention and our goal is not to go out and fail kids, not to give kids D's and F's. You know, I think more appropriately, it'd be nice for parents to know if kids are on track, if they're approaching on track, or if they're below track. I think that would give us more meaningful data than saying your kid got a C, D, or an F, or an A or a B. Because what does that mean right now? They've hardly been in school to be able to be taught by their teachers. So that's what we're looking at the elementary level. I know that it's different, 7 to 12. I think you guys know that. 7 to 12, you have to have grades for GPAs, for even in 7th and 8th grade, you have to have grades for eligibility purposes for OHSAA. So it's a little different there. The elementary level, it would be more appropriate to tell our parents whether their kids are on track, and even if, when we say on track with where we're at now. And I want our teachers to hear this, as well as our parents. We're catching up from last year. Okay, we weren't here at all fourth quarter. Kids were at home learning, and again, it's very difficult to learn. So we are still, along with every other school district across the country, we are still catching up and filling the gaps from last year. We may not get all the way caught up from last year and teach all the content needed for this year. It's just physically impossible when you're here every day, let alone when you're not here every day. So we're going to spend probably this year and maybe even next year catching back up to where we need to be. And that's okay. I want my teachers to know that that's okay. But yeah, so to your point, you know, more appropriately at the elementary level would be some kind of indication of where they're at, on track, not quite on track, approaching on track. Those discussions need to be had. We had those today, but those conversations will continue.
There was a tweet I read that you are not grading assignments, you're collecting evidence to determine student progress and pointing them towards their next steps.
Perfect. And that's, you know, I retweeted that last week, and again, and I think our teachers feel the same way. I'm sure our parents feel the same way. But yeah, you know, you hit it spot on.
Yeah, feel like we're nimble enough if something would come up where one grade would have to be closed for 14 days or whatever, that we could stop and react to that.
Yeah, Dan, we've been practicing that really the last 6 weeks. We've been practicing that. So, you know, that question came up again too yesterday regarding the mental health of kids and what would it do to kids if we came back for 2 weeks and then had to go remote for 2 weeks and then come back again and then go remote again. It's a distinct possibility that could happen. But again, I think the more our kids are in school and more they're connecting with their teachers every day, that helps that. And, you know, there's nothing that says as a district if we're back for 2 weeks and all of a sudden we're ravaged with COVID and then we have to go remote 2 weeks, we don't have to come right back full time. You know, we can stair step it into a hybrid model. We've done it. We know what it is. And then go back to full time. It depends what the conditions say. And I've said that from the beginning back in August, that we would come back face to face when the conditions permit. Right now, what I'm seeing, the conditions permit. In my eyes, again, I'm not speaking for you. Correct. Karen or Paul?
I was just gonna say I prefer, like, if we can start back that next Monday would be much better than waiting until the whole end of the quarter. Just start back as soon as possible.
What's the plan for kindergarten?
It's a great question, Paul, and it was actually asked of me yesterday as well. Kindergarten is an interesting one because it's a cog in the wheel that really dictates a lot of different actions at the elementary. Right now we have kindergarten on half a day because it allows two main things. It allows us to separate our classes into times that are appropriate for lunches. We're not eating lunch at 9:30 in the morning or 9:20 in the morning. So it allows us to spread out our lunches appropriately. It also allows our specials teachers to have time between classes. When you take kindergarten out of the specials rotation, it allows them to clean their materials, and they're one of the areas, specific areas, that have a lot of shared materials. When you look at basketballs and phys ed, and you look at art supplies, and you look at those types of things, it allows those folks, Callum Fowler, Hannah, Taylor, to get in and clean their materials before the kids transition back in. So right now my recommendation would be to stay half day for this year and this year only. We know we did a lot of work in this district to get us to full day kindergarten. Our intent is to always be full day. I think in the COVID era of this year, the best thing and the smartest thing to do would be to stay half day for this year, in my opinion.
Jay, in regards to PPE, I know we've done a nice job of having enough for the current situation with the kids on the split schedule. If we come back full time, are we prepared, and do we have enough supplies?
Yeah, Dan, that is another great question. From a mask perspective, we are covered. We really haven't had to give out a whole lot of masks. We thought we'd be handing out hundreds of masks every day. Kids are bringing their own masks. They're wearing them. They're not losing them. So we have plenty of masks. Excuse me. From a desk divider standpoint, we ordered 600 of those from that provider that I ordered from right in the second week of school. Districts are split right now. A lot of districts are using them. A lot of districts aren't. Remember, this does the same thing a desk divider does. It's preventing the droplets. This does a better job, obviously. Desk dividers are actually called sneeze guards. So if a kid were to sneeze, it would stop the projectiles from going forward. Classes that, especially at the elementary level, want to use them, we have them. At the high school level, we have them, and we can order more if necessary. I think we have enough now. We have some. We distributed all classes that wanted them at this time, and we have extras in storage at this time. But that was a 2-day turnaround last time for us when I got the right vendor.
Do we also feel we'll be effective in notifying the community and the parents that I know you've over-communicated to date, but there's a plan to communicate that and make sure everybody knows what we're doing?
Absolutely, and we would notify. Right now, as far as notifications go, Stacy Orso is our COVID point person. She leads the coordination of notifying parents whenever there's cases. She's done an outstanding job with that. But yeah, we would. I hope to have some guidance and direction from all of you at the end of today. I would like, depending on what is decided, I'd like to come back next week with another special board meeting to actually approve the plan and approve the calendar. But I would put out, pending board approval, this is our plan tonight, so that tomorrow, put out the plan so that they can prepare, that our teachers can prepare, and we can begin doing everything that is needed to be done to get these kids back in school.
I'm in support of getting back to school as soon as possible.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I'm good with the October 5th.
Okay.
I as well. I support this direction we're going.
Where do we go from here? Like, do you have plans in mind already for temperature check, for
Yeah,
dismissal, arrival?
we do,
like
and
all
we
of that kind of stuff? Is that going to be discussed tonight, or?
Well, we can discuss some of it tonight. We had some of these plans in place originally because we thought we were coming back full time. We feel like the temperature checks are going really well. We've actually had the discussion where we need to split it up, do 2 separate arrival times because of congestion with traffic. Right now, we don't feel that way. It might be a little slower, but we don't feel that way. Things have been going pretty well the way we have it. We have 4 entrances, which we thought was probably too many to start, but it was better to be safe than sorry, and that's at Amity. The high school, we have multiple entrances as well. I think 4 as well, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 3 entrances, 11, 12. But we think we're good there. Another logistical concern wasn't not necessarily a concern, but things to think about that I was already thinking about the teachers at the high school that I talked to, brought it up quite frequently when it's lunchtime. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to say this: in no school district who is back full time has there been any evidence of massive spread of COVID anywhere in general, but lunchrooms haven't been an issue. Some of them have dividers, some of them don't. What we would plan to do, and right now what our plan is at Amity, we have it so that kids would be 6 feet apart at lunch, except at 2 spots on each length of table. At those 2 spots, the reason they're not 6 feet is because there would be a kid right across from them. Laterally, it's going to be 6 feet. There's going to be 34 spots. I thought it was 17 earlier. It's 34 spots where kids will be right across from each other. At those spots, we will have a plexiglass divider, dividing the 2 kids. Okay? So we have it covered there. At the junior, senior high school, I've been in those lunches. They're pretty empty right now, which is a good thing. When we double it up, I talked to Shane. I said, Shane, I want you to come up with a plan that allows us to eat lunch in the cafeteria during the normal lunch times. Maybe we have to talk about eating in an auditorium or on the stage. He came back to me and he said, Jay, really, we can get all kids in the cafeteria at one time for each lunch and have about 5 to 6 feet of spacing between those kids. At the most minimum, he said there would be at minimum, if every kid was there, it would be a 4-foot space for some instances, but mainly 5 to 6 feet. He doesn't believe, he said, I don't believe we need barriers. I think we can do, and we don't need to change lunch times. Initially, he had added extra lunch times to spread these kids out. He said, I don't think that's necessary at this point. And so that's the lunch plan at this point. And again, plans may change. We may say, okay, this isn't working. We need to pivot and do this or do that. We can adjust, but the empirical evidence over this last 6 weeks will show you that nowhere has cafeteria, lockers, restrooms, has there been any kind of, not just substantial spread, even minimal spread anywhere in schools.
So I have a question, because all the children will be coming back. How are we with maintenance as far as getting all the rooms done every evening and everything done during the day?
So I talked to Dave Conover about that, and right now at Amity we have we have four custodians, and we've shifted their hours. So they're each putting 4 hours in on the weekend to be able to do the deep clean between our B group and our A group that comes on Monday morning. Okay, when we go back full time, those 16 hours will be put back during the week, and then will be shifted to the evening so that they can get that stuff done on an everyday basis. At the high school, we have 5 custodians, so that's 20 hours that we've shifted to the weekends right now to get the cleaning done. That would also be shifted back to the week. Dave doesn't think we're going to have an issue getting that done by shifting those hours.
What about kids when we announce this, parents who say, whoa, I'm not comfortable with this? What can they go to remote, or how is that going to work?
I'm glad you brought that up as well. Yes, so anytime throughout this entire year, if a family does not feel comfortable with the environment that is here at school, they can take their kids and they can move them online to our remote program. Now, on the flip side, I can tell you that the remote program may have been a little bit more difficult than some families realized. I'm going to say this as well. I think it's pretty much unanimous across the board, as I've talked to all of our staff members, administrators, and it's my belief too. At the beginning of this, we asked families to make a commitment, if they were going to do remote, to do it for the semester. Okay? We also made a commitment. Okay? We have teachers that we have committed to that program. We have financial dollars that we have committed to that program. They made a commitment. We made a commitment. We're going to ask our families, we're going to uphold our end. We're asking our families to hold up their end of the commitment as well. It's also going to help us with numbers. Okay, as we transition back, we're bringing 80% back right now, not 100% back, which helps us. At the semester, if remote learning is not what our families like or enjoy or want to do, they can come back to start the third quarter. But right now, we ask them to uphold their commitment to the end of the first semester. Anything else? Any other questions regarding any of the data or logistics? So from my end, I want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with me communicating to our staff that we're going to make the transition on Monday, October 5th. So next week I'm going to ask for a special board meeting. I'm going to bring it to a vote. You guys are comfortable with me doing that?
Yes.
Paul, are you comfortable with me doing that? Okay.
I'd like to see it a week later than that.
And rationale?
Rationale is, there's enough going on now that I don't think realistically we can get everything back in the order that we want in less than a week, because that's what you're basically giving them. If we don't announce it until that we're coming back, that the 5th is only a week from now, and I think that's too quick. I just don't think that gives the staff enough time to figure out the transition that they need to make.
Okay. It gives us 10 days if we make the announcement to families and staff tomorrow. And, as I was talking to staff, they communicated to me that as long as they had a minimum of a week, that they could make that happen. Paul, I think I would agree that it probably it'll put some stress on some teachers to try to get things and more so, it's not about the physical environment, it's more about getting their plans together, because some of them are planned a week out for A and B students, to be able to generate that plan. And that was what was communicated to me, that as long as they had a week, because what they didn't want to do was make their plans for those A days and those B days and then have them on separate pages where they only had a chance to plan for maybe the B kids before A and B came together. But if we're able to give them a week, which would be if we told them tomorrow, they would have that week, they could make those plans, so then the following week they would be in sync. That's what was communicated to me.
I also think that if you look at that, the 10 days, they would also have next Wednesday, which would be, they kind of meet up with kids and that, but that's usually the time they get things ready for, the following week. So they would be really able to utilize that Wednesday and do that, and communicate with parents who could have questions with it. Personally, I just think the sooner we get them back, the better, but that's just, I think they're ready, and I think it's getting to be a pattern of being at home and I just don't want it to become a habit.
I want to make sure that families know too that we don't make this decision lightly. It's a difficult position to be in, and obviously that's why you were elected and why I was hired to do what I do, and you were elected to do what you do. We have to make the difficult decisions. Another piece that I think needs to be taken into consideration: work schedules for parents. So a lot of parents have 2-week work schedules, and now that being said, I think parents for the most part would say, hey, if you're telling me you're getting my kid back in school, I'll make that work. But that, if teachers brought that up, that need to be taken into consideration, because meaning they may have plans for babysitters on Thursday, Friday, because they know their kids are going to be at school or be at home, but now they got to figure out how they're going to transport those kids to school. So those are plans that they have to make. But I think given 10 days notice, I think if it meant getting kids back in school, our parents would say, I'm going to make it happen. Okay. I think I have a good enough idea where everybody stands. And I think that's one of the great things about what we are doing and what people can see on TV, is that we're having genuine conversation here, and we don't always we all are our own individuals, and we don't always agree. And that's some of our board commitments, is that we don't always agree with each other individually, but we have conversations, we make decisions as a board. So I'm going to send you each an email and ask what day would be best for you. I'm going to ask for a special board meeting next week to officially approve a calendar and approve the return to school. Okay? Okay, that's all I have.
Anybody else have anything for board discussion?
I would like to clarify something. Last week when we were talking about the t-shirts and I did not wear mine tonight, but I'd like to say that I kind of had a brain freeze there, and the person that actually took and literally made them for us was Danny Eigel. And so I just wanted to put that out there. We kind of came up with an idea. Jake came up with the Wildcat. Danny Eigel came and said, wow, I can do these shirts. PTO said, hey, wow, I'll pay for them. And so I just wanted to send out that was definitely a team effort, and that I actually been out to different places, and I were at the PT yesterday, and they were like, wow, those are great shirts. And so I just want to say thank you to the team that did that.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, we do not have need for executive session this evening, so if I could have motion for adjournment.
So move.
All those in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion